and have done everything in the interim period to maintain that to the standards of the time. And the concern we have now is that, you know, if they come at this and start imposing the standards, the EPA guidelines and standards of 2009, which automatically means people who got their septic tanks installed in the 70s will have to, you know, carry out extensive works to bring the septic tank up to the 2009 standard. And that, again, is, you know, it's penalising people for living in rural Ireland who have done absolutely nothing wrong. You know, they've carried out, you know, annual maintenance, they've desludged their septic tanks on, you know, on a needs basis and that. And they need to be given all the financial assistance to bring their septic tanks up to the standard, whatever standard Phil Hogan decides he's going to operate from. But that has been totally left out. They've left it very, very open. They said they'll assess, inspect the septic tanks, and they'll make a decision at that stage. And that's totally wrong. It's totally unfair, because over the last number of years, there's been a massive investment in sewerage schemes throughout urban Ireland. In the last number of years, there's been 1.5 billion invested in urban Ireland in sewerage treatment plants and, you know, upgrading all forms of infrastructure in those urban areas. And you cannot penalise someone because they live in rural Ireland. And what we're saying basically is people in rural Ireland have to be treated the same as in urban Ireland. If there's a massive investment, which there was, to the tune of 1.5 billion in one area, the same rules should apply for those living in rural Ireland. So there's still massive amounts of concern there. As I said, people have up until the 30th of March to have a look at this document and feed into the debate. Certainly, Sinn Féin are not very happy that the amendments we put forward have been guillotined, but at this point it's imperative that the Minister comes out and says there's going to be 100% grant aid for people to carry out the necessary works to their septic tanks. So that's one major concern of people here in rural Ireland, and, you know, maybe as the meeting comes to an end, if people have any more questions or they want any more information on it, certainly we'll try our best to give that information. But, you know, I don't think that issue should be taken in isolation when we talk about rural Ireland. Fintan, again, you know, he's bang on when he speaks about the attack on rural schools. I spoke about the attack on our rural police stations, and the fact that up to 200 of them are going to be forced to close over the next number of years. We also have the household charge, which at this point only about 15% have registered. Now, it's estimated that of that 15%, a large chunk of them are actually exempt from the charge. You know, they may be in receiving mortgage relief or whatever. So, yeah, it goes to states. They still have to register, but they don't have to pay. So none of that has actually come out. But again, as I said earlier on, this is very much the thin end of the wedge. Once it comes in, as is the case in other countries, it will only be pushed up. So this is really, the sweetener to get people into the system. You have all your details, and then it's pushed up. And Sinn Féin have taken a very pragmatic stance on this. I mean, certainly, as someone who's exempt from the charge, I'm exempt because I live in a council house. I'm a tenant of Braytown Council. So I'm exempt from the charge, which is ludicrous, because if you have a look at other people out there who were hoodwinked into believing if they didn't get on the property ladder, you know, the cost of houses was going to escalate so high that no one was ever going to afford it. So they were fooled into believing that, you know, they had to get a mortgage or else they never would. And those people now find themselves, you know, either their wages dramatically cut through the universal social charge, through Crow Park agreement or whatever. And all the the other stealth taxes. So you see their, on one hand, their take-home pay dramatically reduced. That's if they're lucky enough to have a job, but if they're unfortunate enough to be one of the over 400,000 people now unemployed in the state, totally without a job, they still have to pay this charge as well. So it's grossly unfair. It's totally unjust. But Sinn Féin, as I said, have taken a stance that we're not going to tell people to boycott it. That's a decision people have to decide and make up their own minds on. But whatever way people decide to go on it, Sinn Féin will 100% support those people, because there are going to be, I suppose, repercussions for people if they don't pay it. Whether those repercussions will follow through, because at this point 15% of people have only registered. If it continues at that rate, there could be up to 750,000 households unregistered, and how likely is it to take legal action against all them houses? We don't know, but that's a risk people are going to have to decide for themselves to take. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you to follow suit and boycott this charge, and then maybe 5 years down the road find that your children can't avail of VEC grants because you refuse to pay this charge, or other financial or legal implications on people. So people have to decide that for themselves, but it is a totally unjust tax. Sinn Féin are opposing it at all levels and will continue to do so. The other issues affecting people, and again, this isn't about us telling you what's affecting you, because you are the only ones that know. You are living here on a daily basis, and you know exactly the real issues that are hurting you, that are impacting on you, whether it's personally or services here in the local area. But I suppose I'm just giving a broader overview as to the campaigns, the issues that we're working on a bigger level on. I mean, the other major issue is the attack on our hospitals. And Sinn Féin have been to the fore here in Wexford, fighting the cuts in Wexford General Hospital, whether it's bed closures or ward closures. Sinn Féin and Wicklow also have been to the fore in campaigning for hospital services in St Columkille's Hospital in Loughlinstown. But last year, Fianna Fáil, before they went out of power, removed €1 billion from the health budget, and cuts to medical services are still continuing to be in that range. And only last week we heard the impact that's going to have on all services across the health boards and the HSE. They've come out. The Minister for Health, James Riley, has said there's going to be less beds, there's going to be less public wards, there is going to be further attacks on smaller hospitals, nursing homes. There's going to be further closures on accident and emergencies, and that is the case with the campaign in Loughlinstown, St Columkille's Hospital. And I suppose people in this area, and South County Wicklow and that, would be kind of caught between Wexford General and maybe St Columkille's for their accident and emergency and hospital services. And it's ludicrous to think that St Columkille's Hospital in Loughlinstown would lose out its accident and emergency. We've seen them doing it in other parts of the country, down in Roscommon, down in Cork, and we've seen the impact that has had. We've seen them closing down accident and emergencies up in Louth, and we've heard pretty grim repercussions as to the personal impact that has on people. So it's totally wrong to attack these crucial and critical services in the name of austerity or in any other name. And this is all coming at a time, you can put all these together, the stealth taxes, the cuts in services, and you see what they're doing. You have the government TDs, the ministers coming out and saying, "Sure, we have no alternative. This has to happen. Otherwise, we'd be bankrupt. we have no money, you know, all this waffle, all this nonsense. But at the end of this month, the government have a choice to make. They are going to, and I'll safely say that, because they've come out categorically at this stage and said, we have no choice. They're going to put another 3.1 billion of our money into a toxic bank, Anglo-Irish Bank, in the promissory notes. 3.1 billion is going in, and that's going to happen on an annual basis for the next 20 years. There's choices. They don't have to do that. There's no obligation on them to do that. It's not contained in the IMF, ECB memorandum of understanding for them to do that. It will have no impact whatsoever on drawing down any money from anywhere. It's a choice they're making. Same as it was a choice they made a couple of months ago, where they handed over, I think it was 1.2 billion to senior bondholders. Again, a choice they made, and a choice they took. They handed over that amount of money to bondholders. And all the time we're being told, you know, austerity, we have to cut back. We have no choice. They look at this country as a household rather than a state, rather than an economy, rather than, you know, communities. They look upon it as a household, which is a crazy thing to do. And you know, they always say, well, you know, you have to manage your household budget. If you're spending more than you're bringing in, you have to cut it. You have to make savings somewhere. But this is not a household. This is a country. This is a community. And you know, I was at a conference over the weekend dealing with this new treaty that's being pushed down our throat, the European Fiscal Amendment Treaty, or the Austerity Treaty, which to give it its proper and real name. And the point there, one of the speakers made, and rightfully so, he says, if it was your household and your children were sick and your children needed education, you go and you borrow the money. You get the money from somewhere and you invest in it, and you pay it back at a later stage. And that's the difference. You know, we're being told here, Ireland, you know, the 26 counties in this state, it's a household. We're spending too much money. We have to cut it. There's people dying. There's people in hospital. There's people needing education. What the hell? You know, we'll cut the cloth, and you know, so we have the old relief valve there. If things get overheated and we can't deal with it, we'll send them off on a ferry or a plane to America, Australia, or wherever. And that's totally wrong. And I mentioned the issue there of this treaty that's coming, and it's important that we put that into context here, because again, we can't deal with all these issues in isolation. We can deal with, you know, the rural transport cuts, where, you know, there's 30 million being taken out of that. There's money being cut from the school bus, you know, the rural school buses, where, you know, over 123,000 children rely on, you know, these buses to get them to rural schools on a daily basis. We see the cost being pushed up by 50% there, and we see a number of the routes being cut, all in the name of austerity. And if this treaty, and Sinn Féin are going to run a very, very rigorous campaign, because this treaty, if it gets through, is going to impact even more so than, you know, the previous cuts that have been, you know, made, and you know, people have taken a hit on.